Welcome to the With Winning in Mind podcast. I'm Heather Sumlin, along with my brother and co-host Troy Bassham. And today we're really discussing what mental management actually is. What are these circles that we talk about and that we have on our logo, and what do they mean, and what does it mean to you? So Troy, I'm going to ask you the question. What's the significance of our logo?
So the significance of the logo basically represents the triad state, which is the model of how the three areas of performance work together. So what we're showing in the diagram of the logo is the conscious, subconscious, and the self-image balanced, meaning they're all equal in what they do, and they're working together. So it doesn't mean that the conscious mind and the subconscious equally work. It means that they're doing what they should be doing, nothing more, nothing less, in harmony of one another.
So basically, if the conscious mind is doing its job, the subconscious is built, and the self-image is also built, then you're in balance.
Correct.
Okay, let's break it down. What is the conscious mind?
So the conscious mind would be simple. The simple way of looking at it is conscious equals thoughts.
So your thoughts should be what? Like, how do we know what our thoughts should be in order to have that strong circle?
So anything that you think about, you're doing consciously, like you're consciously thinking.
Right.
And so we think all the time throughout the day. You have different thoughts, and sometimes you drift into another thought, and you're shifting from one to another. You know, people, I have attention deficit disorder. Well, all that means to me is that your conscious mind shifts quicker from one thing to another. I get bored with this, I move on to this other thought. But you're doing that consciously, like you're aware of it. So if you're having a conversation with someone for an hour, well, how often do you drift away from the conversation you're having with that person thinking about something else? You're doing it consciously.
I may have drifted already.
Yes, it's easy.
It's possible. Now, in sport, though, because our primary audience that we're talking to are athletes. And so in sport, why is it important to control your conscious mind? And can you kind of address that a little bit?
Well, that's kind of a complicated question. When you look at it from the conscious mind in the beginning is going to train the subconscious. So let's briefly address subconscious. The subconscious mind is basically skill. What we mean by that is you have the ability to perform a task so well that you don't have to think about it.
Right.
So for many of us, we don't think about walking. We just get up and walk to the car. So if you're going to go to your car to get something and then come back, would you think about how I'm going to get to the car and get back? No, you would just walk there and walk back. That's subconscious skill. But in the beginning, you're kind of thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to develop the skill? So you're consciously training the subconscious. Okay, so there's the first thing of why the conscious mind is important, because it's training your skill level. The second reason why it's important is because it's going to send what we call imprints into the self-image. The self-image is your habits and attitudes. It's basically the one area of performance that makes you act like you. We refer to that as the comfort zone.
Okay.
So if I'm thinking about something, I'm sending the imprint to the self-image that's like me to do that. So let's just say that I'm training to be a rifle shooter, and I'm thinking about rifle shooting a lot. So I would train. Let's say I'm at practice. I had a really good practice. I come home. I'm talking to my dad about how good the practice was, and we're talking about the good things we did. You know, I was really good with follow through. I had like this many 10s in a row. I was doing all these things. Well, those imprints of the self-image allow the self-image to grow, because the self-image is going to think, wow, we are becoming a good shooter. Well, what if I didn't have a good practice? I come home and I complained about it. Well, I didn't have a good performance. I'm complaining about it. The self-image is going to say, well, I guess we're really not good at this. So it's trying to figure out where you are as an individual, and you're trying to build skill to get better at what you're doing, but it's all starting with this conscious mind, how you control your thoughts. So each of these together generate performance. So think about it. If they're imbalanced, good performance is easy. If they're not imbalanced, good performance is going to be very difficult.
So let's discuss some ways that maybe someone could be out of balance. And I think the first one is obvious in the beginning. Like you were talking about, if you don't have the skill yet, all you're really doing is thinking because you have an instructor who's teaching you. And so your conscious mind, it might seem bigger because we look at this in circles, right? So the bigger, not always the better, but probably the better. It's just that the conscious mind is the only one working right now, right? In the very beginning, until you develop the skill, or how does that work?
Yeah, so in the beginning, you're right. The conscious mind is going to be doing most of the work. So it means it's going to be out of balance. The conscious is going to be huge because you have to think about what you're doing.
Right.
You haven't developed the skill, so it's subconscious is small. And your self-image is, you want me to do what?
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to happen. So it's going to be
not like
small.
me to do this.
Exactly. So if you and I were going to pick up bowling,
yeah.
we're going to be taking a lesson from somebody.
Hopefully.
Like
Probably
shout out to
Susie.
Susie. Yeah.
Susie, watch her interview. We interviewed her last year.
So if Susie Minshew is teaching us how to bowl,
we're going to get really good.
Regardless of what we think about the sport, or what we think we know or don't know based on what we've watched, or, I was a kid and I did that.
Right.
But you probably did it wrong anyway.
I'm sure I have a lot of bad habits with bowling. Absolutely sure.
Yeah, so she is going to teach the proper way of doing it. Well, you're going to be thinking about those things. Well, how many different moving parts are there to that action? A bunch. Well, I can't be thinking about how to hold the ball, how to approach the line, how to bring the ball back, how to actually properly do all these steps to do it correctly in the beginning. It's going to take repetition. So when people say that, well, how do you develop a strong subconscious circle? It's very simple. You get quality instruction from a quality coach, and the second thing you do is repetition, which means you need to practice a lot before it becomes subconscious, meaning now the conscious mind didn't have to do all that thinking.
Right.
So it's like, oh, wait, I got these steps down. I got this back and forth motion with my arm down. I kind of know what I'm doing. So now I don't have to think as much, therefore becoming easier to do the task. But if I don't develop the self-image that I'm good, then I'm not going to perform at the ability that I have in competition, because the self-image is going to keep me from doing that.
So we can also be out of balance where maybe our thoughts are in the right place, or so our conscious circle is strong. Our skills are built because of that repetition and with good instruction, but we didn't pay attention to how to build that self-image, and so then the self-image is smaller. So then we call that being frustrated, don't we? Like that's what we call the frustrated expert. That's the person who, I really can do it in practice. I can do it all day long in practice. I get to competition, I fall apart, and I don't understand why. And it tends to be a self-image issue. But why is that? Why would that be?
Well, I joke because I've been asking this question all year long to everybody. So see if you get this answer correctly. I said, we live in the United States of, and fill in the blank.
Well, you say negativity.
I say negativity. Most people say America, of course, but I say, no, we live in the United States of negativity because in other words, it's socially acceptable in the society we live in to be negative.
Right.
Well, now let's look at sport. I work with a lot of golfers and archers. In both of those sports, it's socially acceptable to be negative. So when I finish my round and I go into the clubhouse, I'm talking to my buddies, how many times do you think we're talking about our good shots versus our bad shots?
Well, unfortunately, I would imagine you're talking about the bad shots much more frequently
Much
and with
more.
more passion.
Oh, yeah. And it's more fun, because it's the easiest thing to do. We talk about what I didn't get. Oh, wait, you shot a good score. Oh, it could have been better if I didn't do. And then they go on and on. Right. Well, it's funny because archers, totally different sport, right? But they're the same way. At the end of the day, when they're done with the match, what are they talking about?
They're bad shots.
What they did well, what they did bad. A lot of them are talking about their bad performance, not their good performance, meaning it's socially acceptable to do that. Now, why is this a bad thing? Because in that environment, the self-image cannot grow. It can't grow. It's going to resist growing. And this is why we find so many people that are frustrated. I know what to do. I know how to think when I'm on the firing line, when I'm on the golf course, when I'm in the competition, no matter what sport it is. Like, and then all of a sudden I'm not doing it.
Right. I've worked hard on that pre-shot routine, or at least being positive and analyzing and structuring how I want to execute a shot. But then they're not controlled afterwards, right?
They haven't built their self-image. Now, what's interesting is this is not the pattern that everyone does. Like, it's the most common, where, hey, I'm the beginner. What do I want to do? Well, you want to develop skill. So you develop skill and you get better. Okay. But then you didn't work on your confidence. Your self-image didn't grow because you're focusing on things you don't want to do. I mean, in the beginning, are you performing well or bad? You're performing bad.
Probably not performing really well.
But over time, you start to figure it out. You start to perform better and better. But then when you don't perform well, what do? You get upset.
Yes.
So the self-image is in this.
You tell people about it.
Well, yeah, there's like, what do I do? What do I do? And so you wind up having the frustrated expert happen more because this is a common direction. Mm-hmm. However, what do you do when you take an individual that's learning a sport, but they're really good about being confident? There are people that are just really good about being confident. I mean, they really believe in themselves. Now, I'm not talking about the ones to a fault. Like, right. I'm not talking about the ones who falsify that they're good. Oh, I'm good at everything. And everyone knows they're not, right? I'm talking about the person who legitimately, I think I can do this. I really believe I can do this. And as they're getting better, they're feeding themselves the self-image with positive imprints, maybe not to other people, but to themselves. And they're like, oh, no, I got this. I know I'm this good, and I know I can do it in competition.
That's also, I think, a lot of times the person who is seeking opportunities to complement their competitors or their peers in their sport because they are confident in themselves. And so then they're complimenting other people and they're recognizing the good in others, which I think helps them just as much to stay balanced.
Yeah, but oftentimes when we see these individuals, they're good about having the self-image that I'm good. They're good about having the skill. But you know what they aren't very good at?
Depends on
controlling their conscious thought.
That can happen. Getting distracted in a competition.
Yeah, we call that person the unfocused. So this is someone who's opposite of what you were describing earlier. Instead of having a big conscious circle where they're overthinking what they're doing, now they're easily distracted and unfocused. I'm playing in a tournament and someone yells at me. And I look back and I'm like, who said that? And now I'm focused on that person. I'm thinking about what did they say? What did they mean by what they said?
Or if I'm
instead
a teenager,
of performing.
Right, and if I'm a teenager and I'm checking my Snapchat to try to see who's messaged me and, ooh, did that cute boy send me a snap yet? I don't know. It's not the right time to be focused on some of those things, and that can pull you completely out of balance.
Yeah, and that's why we call the person unfocused because they're not focusing on what they should be focused on. And then the favorite one that we see, not nearly as much. I mean, we don't see these people much, but they do exist out there, and that's the overconfident. The one who has some skill that knows kind of how to think, but they believe they're better than they really are. These are people that just, for whatever reason, lack no confidence. But they're not in sync with their true skill level. They think they're better than they really are. When they don't perform at their level, or what they perceive as their level, they always have an excuse.
It's someone else's fault.
They think, oh, well, I wasn't feeling good, or this happened, that happened. So, well, that guy did this. It's not, in balance to what it should be. That person tends to be a coach's worst nightmare.
But they tend to not come to us for training, so.
No, because they don't need help. Yeah, I've got this figured out.
So.
But in my experience, this is a person who got really good really quick. At a young age, typically, before they go through adolescence, when they go through adolescence, now in their mind, they're that same player that they were when they were 14. Well, now they're 18. People they were beating back then, now they're struggling to beat now. And the danger of the one that's overconfident, they tend to not to train hard. They don't work hard on the skill. That doesn't mean they can't pop up and do well, but they're not going to be consistent. So what we want to promote is we want to promote what these three circles are. We want to promote balance, where the conscious, subconscious, self-image are balanced and working together. And, understand that these are not the only imprints, the balancing of all three. These are not the only examples. I mean, many times I'll have clients that will draw these circles out, and their circles will be three different sizes.
Right. I see that a lot.
They have a really good size subconscious circle, but they have a big conscious, and they have a small, self-image. So it's almost like, well, wait a minute, the subconscious is double the size of the self-image. The subconscious is much better, but then the conscious is double the size of the subconscious. Like, what's that? Like, yeah, I'm kind of messed up and all that. So there's multiple ways that somebody could draw out their triad model. What we're doing is we're trying to see, okay, what does it look like? And then what's the best approach to get it balanced? That's the tricky part of what we do, is basically trying to figure out, okay, what does your performance model look like, your triad state? And then what is the best way to approach it? Now, I'll give you the most common way to approach it. Okay. The most common way to approach it is to tackle the conscious first. And that is because if you look at a performance model, it all starts with the conscious. You're thinking before you're doing.
Right.
You have to think a thought or do something before it imprints in the self-image. So it makes sense to target that one first. So in many cases, we do that. Not necessarily always. Sometimes you have someone that, man, I'm really good about controlling my thoughts, but they might not be doing it in a way to where I need to build self-image correctly. So in those cases, well, what if we just change the way you train to help build self-image at the same time you work on skill?
When you talked about that, when we interviewed Kevin, you talked about, or he mentioned that his training completely changed because you helped him adjust how he trained in order to better build and balance him out, which is fascinating to, I think, a lot of people, that a mental coach would change the way that you train.
Yeah, what does a mental coach have anything to do with training skill? And this is what I say to a lot of people. I'll use golf as an example. I think most people play golf, they don't train golf.
Right.
And the reason why I'm confident in saying that is because most people are only working on building subconscious skill. They're not working on building all three areas of performance at the same time. So when it comes to somebody like Kevin, he's already playing at a high level. When I first met him, he's already on the Corn Ferry Tour. He has a good pre-shot routine. He's controlling his thoughts pretty well. So do we need to revamp what he's doing? No. But when it comes to building self-image, it's like, okay, you're so good. Why aren't you playing better at tournaments? Well, sometimes a player might have doubt. Well, why would they have doubt? And so we're looking at the training. Well, how do you train? Well, what do you mean how I train? I do this, this, and this. Okay, why that order? What's the specific reason why you do in that order? He said, I don't know. I just always done it that way.
And then if we change it.
And I'm like, shouldn't the order be in a way that benefits and allows the self-image to grow? He said, well, what would you suggest I change? I'm like, what are you best at? That's what I would do first. So think about it. If you're a golfer and you're really good at putting, but you're doing putting last, I would say, why not do it first? Now, in fairness, the question would be, well, why? What difference does it make? Well, because if I start off with what I'm best at first, what's the probability I'm going to feel good when I move on to something else that needs work?
Really good. It makes the training more enjoyable if you start with what you're good at or what you like the most.
Yeah, I've started myself in a good mood.
Yeah. You're building your self-image right from the get-go. Makes a lot of sense. Coaches, pay attention, because if you are working with a team or with individuals and you're starting off with their hardest thing, you could be inadvertently pulling them out of balance without even realizing it.
Yeah. Now, working on the thing that you're weakest on first makes sense if you're only concerned about subconscious skill. If I'm only concerned about developing skill, that would make sense. And in the beginning, if I'm learning a sport, by default, I'm going to have to do that. But once you get beyond the intermediate level, so to me, I divide the beginner to elite level. I divide it in 4 parts. I've got a beginner where we all start with, and I'm trying to become the elite level athlete. Like the best of the best, right? But in the middle, you've got this intermediate to advanced level. An intermediate level athlete is someone who knows how to play the game. They're good, okay? They're going to compete, and it's going to be respectable. But that doesn't mean they're going to be able to win. They're not good enough to win. The advanced person is good enough to win, but they're not showing up all the time.
Okay.
There's something missing. It's like
inconsistent.
Yeah, they could shoot the scores to compete at the level, but for some reason they're not quite at the elite level. They still need to grow in that. But when you look at someone that from a beginner to an intermediate level, well, what am I going to tackle? I'm going to tackle the subconscious because they need to develop skill. But once they go from that intermediate level to the advanced level, something interesting happens. Is that the skill level is not what's separating an advanced level athlete to an elite level athlete.
Right.
I mean, you look at
the same skill.
Look at basketball. How many guys can shoot the basketball? I mean, everyone in the NBA can pretty much shoot.
Right.
I mean, I'm amazed at how many people can make a 3-pointer now.
Right.
I mean, I'm unfortunately I'm old enough to remember when the 3-point line was closer. You know,
they changed it.
Oh,
See,
it gets further and further away.
I follow basketball so little, I didn't even know they adjusted the.
Oh, well,
Wow.
it's gotten further away over
That
the
makes
years.
sense. We're making all sports a little bit harder, aren't we?
Yeah, make it more difficult. But what's amazing is these athletes, these basketball players are making the change with the change.
Yeah.
I mean, look at my sport, international rifle shooting. It's now air rifles all decimal score. People are like, what's decimal score? What do you mean by decimal
So
score?
it's not just a 10, it's a 10-point
Correct. If
1,
I hit
2,
a
3, 4, 5.
perfect 10, like it's perfect,
dead center.
it's 10.9 points. But yet, when I competed, if it was dead center area, you barely touched the 10 ring, it counted 10 points.
It's 10 points, right.
It's totally changed. So,
To make it harder.
and the athletes have now changed with it to where now the scores they're shooting are just, it's amazing how good they're performing, just like basketball players. It's amazing what we see them do. And you can do that with any sport. Look at any sport, they do that. But we're only talking about skill level. If you're not building the self-image that I can do it, and you're not controlling the thoughts, the conscious mind in a way to take advantage of your skill, then you're going to suffer when you compete against somebody who can do those 3 things. So if I'm equally skilled that you are, and I'm balanced, and you're not,
You have a huge advantage over me.
yeah, good luck if you beat me. It's not going to happen.
Right.
You're not going to beat me. But if we're both balanced, then the one that has bigger circles that's balanced has the advantage over the other person. So what we want is we're going to say, well, look, if I can get you balanced, how much better would you be?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so people are shocked when they come in, they go, well, I mean, how is it that in a short period of time you're making people better? All I'm doing, I'm not making their skill level better. I don't care about this. I mean, I work with a baseball pitcher, and I work with a golfer, and I work with an archer, right? And a fencer, right?
Yeah.
Those are 4 different sports.
I'm his sister. I can tell you he does not do fencing. Like he does not know.
I've
how
never
to
done
fence.
fencing.
I can also tell you from accuracy and like truly know you're not throwing very many pitches.
I only pitched once.
In
There's
fact,
a reason why it was once.
The only time my brothers wanted to play with me when we were growing up was to put me in the outfield while they played baseball so that I could go and get all of the
Yeah.
foul balls.
She was the retriever. You were a great retriever.
It was incredible. That was my talent.
That's right. But
Until you hit me in the eye with baseball. Black eye. True story. Okay, keep going.
well, not my fault you didn't get out of the way. So you have 4 different
I think Brian
unique
did it,
sports. He probably did. Because I think he was a little bit better at that than I was.
It was Brian who did it, and I'm going to tell you why. Because he's the one who felt so guilty. He picked me up on his back, and he raced me to Grandma's house because Mom and Dad weren't home. And he raced me to Grandma's house because he felt guilty. So, yep, it wasn't even you. Can't even blame for this.
There you go.
All right. So, anyway, fun family story in the middle of our whole discussion. Keep going.
Way to go. He knocked some sense into it. See, Brian, you knocked some sense into Heather.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, and I never played baseball, ever.
So we have these 4 different unique sports. I don't know anything with the skill level. Like I could tell a person how if I had someone come to me and say, "Hey, teach me how to throw a fastball," I wouldn't know the first thing to do. It'd be like, "Well, how do I get in an on guard position in fencing?" I couldn't tell you. Okay, when it came to properly hitting a golf ball, I'm going to say, "Yeah, you need to go talk to this person, this person, this person." Okay,
Right.
so from a skill set, I don't know anything about these sports. But I'm working with athletes in all these sports. And I'm like, why? Because I know how the conscious mind works, and I know how to build self-image. If I can help them change the way they think in competition and in training,
Right.
that helps build and protect self-image at the same time gets the conscious circle balanced with the subconscious they already have.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think is going to happen to the results?
Now it's going to skyrocket.
Yeah, has to. And that's why I like doing what we do.
And that's what's so fun about what we do is we can work with pretty much anyone in any sport. We don't have to know everything about the sport. We understand how you need to think and how you need to build your self-image in order to be balanced. And when you're balanced, you have a chance of reaching your potential under pressure. And when you're not, you don't have a chance at all.
Yep. So just to wrap up quickly, if you take the conscious mind and you want to grow the conscious mind, easy way of looking at this is I have to define the right thing to think before, during, and after a task.
Exactly.
Now, what's challenging is every sport's got different tasks. Okay, where you want to develop skill. Like if you're watching this, you're like, well, I just started in my sport. What can I do to help that? It's pretty simple. Make sure whoever you're getting instruction with, that they're a high-level quality instructor. And then 2, repetition. You got to train. And self-image, pretty simple. You have to learn how to respond, not react, and you have to know how to do proper imprinting. If you do those things, it's going to make it easier to get balanced. And we have different techniques and tools that we use for that. But I think what we'll do is, with our Patreon members, they're always asking, well, which one's the most important of the 3? And
we're going to have a little discussion about that.
Yeah, because the cop-out is they're all equally important because you could argue each one. However, I think one's more important than the other, and I think you think a different one is more important.
Yeah, I don't know that we agree on exactly which one's the most important. And so therefore, for our Patreon members, if you are not a Patreon member, we highly recommend that you join. Our silver and gold level members receive exclusive content from us every single week. And this will be an exclusive discussion that we're going to have about how do we build and give some tips on how to build the conscious and the self-image. And then which of the 3 circles is more important according to you and according to me, and we're going to have a really nice discussion about it. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to work with us, check out mentalmanagement.com or send me an email at info@mentalmanagement.com, and I'm happy to help you get started. Have a great day.